So this is their introduction, and the bits that I've underlined and numbered are bits that I want you to pick up on as key sort of success measures, I guess. These are your ingredients for a successful introduction. So I'm not going to read it through, I'll just let that sit there for a minute, and then we'll go through exactly why these aspects to the introduction were successful and why you should bring them into your own essay. So I'll move on now. Number 1, you'll notice that the first word and first sentence, the candidate very quickly defines her terms. They define belief, the question being, is belief voluntary, or are beliefs voluntary? They've done that straight away. That is a very good thing for an examiner to see, because it shows clarity, it shows persuasiveness, and it shows that you are already starting to answer the question. There's no sort of preamble, you don't need to give much background context. The introduction doesn't need to be very long. You can see here with the length, it's not actually that long, it's only about 5 sentences. It is simply merely that. It is an introduction to your argument and it's some definitions that will be useful. There's also a subheading, which you'll notice, that says introduction. That's optional, but it doesn't hurt to do it, so feel free to if you would like to. Point number 2, which we'll talk about later as well, is citations. So this candidate immediately has cited the source from which she's found her definition of belief, which was the Merriam-Webster dictionary. And they've done this in a specific format. There are different ways of formatting your citations in your essays. This is one of them. There's no right or wrong, and the John Locke Essay Competition don't specify a correct way of doing it, but the main thing is that you're consistent with the citations. Number 3, a quote. So they've put a quote in their introduction. I'm not saying that you have to put a quote in your introduction, but it doesn't hurt, because it shows that you are, it shows to the examiner where your thinking and where your research comes from directly, because they've provided a direct quote and then they've cited it. So it shows your knowledge and your use of evidence in the introduction, so you're already ticking off those key points. And number 5 is the clear statement of the argument already. So already in the 3rd or 4th sentence, the candidate has set out their argument within 5 words. Belief is an involuntary response to perception. So being very clear, clarity is key here, and persuasiveness is key. And key to that is bringing it in as early as possible. You don't want to be leaving it till the conclusion in order to introduce your argument, basically. As I've said before, I want to stress this. This isn't about your scientific knowledge necessarily. I mean, it is. It's about doing the research and things. It's about effective essay writing. So really pay attention to structure and writing style and things like that, if those are things that don't necessarily come naturally to you. And I'll share the resource with you later for that. Number 6 is another really important point on structure. So the way they sort of end their introduction is by setting up what I'd like to call a roadmap for the following parts of their essay. So they say, to properly delve into this argument, we must look at all the factors, etc., etc. And then point 7 is that introduction of those different themes, which they then talk about in the following paragraphs. So psychological, neurobiological, and sociological. So it's a really clear roadmap to the examiner that they've set out, which makes life and work much easier for the examiner to follow their line of argument, follow the candidate's line of argument, and understand exactly how they've got from point A, their argument in point number 5 there, to point B, and how they're going to do that through their essay, rather than just jumping in with a paragraph full of evidence, if that makes sense. And 8, I think this is really important as well, you can see in the final sentence, they repeat their argument again. And this is just hammering home that persuasive style and that persuasive thought, right? So they say, mechanisms of perception and belief are in fact involuntary. And they've said that again, they've said that previously as well, but that repetition is quite effective. Obviously don't do it too much, but it's an effective rhetoric device.